They say there's no fury like a woman scorned, but those folks obviously never lived next door to an HOA president armed with a clipboard and an inflated sense of authority. My name's Henry Grayson, 68 years old, a retired mechanical engineer, and the last Grayson standing on this piece of dirt. I've been in Pinewood Estates for 17 years, ever since I inherited the family plot smack in the middle of the neighborhood like a crooked nail in an otherwise flawless board. It's a peaceful spot, sometimes too peaceful until I decided to plant corn. That's when the quiet shattered. It started with a simple plan. Corn golden, glorious Midwest corn. The kind that doesn't just taste like summer, it is summer. My dad used to say you judge a man's heart by how straight his rows are. I've got 30 tidy rows out back, each one standing tall and proud like little green sentinels, ears lifted to the sky. I wasn't selling it or mass-producing, just growing it for my own sanity and the buttery bliss of a July barbecue. But to Evelyn Harper, HOA president and self-appointed ruler of the cul-de-sac, I'd committed an unforgivable sin against suburban perfection. You'd think I'd built a junkyard behind the garage. I first spotted her one morning, pacing near my property line, clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched like a vulture's stare. She eyed my corn like it was planning a coup. The next day a letter arrived, cease and desist. Violation of HOA landscaping guidelines. Landscaping. This wasn't some overgrown shrub, this was corn, the pride of Indiana. Still, I figured I'd head to the next HOA meeting and smooth things over. I'd face worse, once talked a sergeant out of tossing a live grenade in 71. Surely I could handle one uptight control freak. I was wrong. The meeting took place in the clubhouse, reeking of lemon cleaner and burnt coffee. It was me, 12 board members, and a handful of nosy neighbors pretending to mind their own business. Evelyn sat at the head like a dethroned monarch, flanked by two sidekicks in identical cardigans and sour expressions. She slammed the bylaw packet down like it was a gavel. "Mr. Grayson," she said, avoiding my gaze, "your yard violat subsection B17, no unauthorized plantings beyond decorative flora. Corn is not decorative, it's agricultural." I flashed a half smile. "Ever seen corn dance in the breeze at dusk, Evelyn? That's beauty. Beats your petunias any day." The room snickered. Evelyn's jaw tightened. "This isn't a debate. You have 30 days to remove it, or we'll enforce penalties." "Penalties?" I said, still grinning. "For growing corn? For breaking rules?" she shot back. I leaned in, letting the silence stretch. "Maybe your rules need a rewrite. My family's been on this land since before your HOA printed its first pamphlet." Gasps. A cough. Evelyn's eye twitched. But she wasn't finished. Without warning, she called for a vote to rezone my property under stricter regulations. The board bobbed their heads like trained pigeons. 13 hands shot up. Mine stayed down. "Motion passed," she said, smug as a cat with a canary. Just like that, I was a renegade on my own turf. Afterward, a few neighbors tossed me pitying glances, the kind you get watching someone else's roof cave in. One whispered she fined Tom Delaney $2,000 last month for keeping his Christmas lights up past January. Watch out. Watch out isn't how I was raised. I was taught to stand firm in a gale, to fix problems when others just griped. So standing in the parking lot, staring at the row of SUVs and manicured lawns, something clicked. They wanted my corn gone? Fine. I wouldn't just grow corn, I'd build an adventure. The idea hit like a spark, a maze. A wild, winding labyrinth of Indiana grit. If they wanted to play by the book, I'd dance around it. I walked home that night grinning, my head buzzing with plans. This wasn't about corn, Anna Marie, it was about principle, about roots, both real and deep. They thought I was just an old guy playing farmer. They had no clue they'd just poked a retired engineer with time, tools, and a knack for solutions. Next morning, I stood at the field's edge, boots in the dirt, coffee in hand. The sun glinted off the corn tips, and the wind murmured through them like a dare. Let them come, I thought. Bring their bylaws and ballots. I wasn't growing corn anymore, I was growing something bigger. I called my nephew Jake. Jake's a free spirit, more dreams than focus. He studied architecture, switched to video game design, tried YouTubing, and now mostly builds Lego empires and overanalyzes slasher flicks. But he's got a designer's eye and a soft spot for his Uncle Henry. When I told him I needed a cornfield turned into a maze, he choked on his energy drink. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," I said. I want 3 dead ends, a hidden path, and a fake scarecrow that shrieks when you touch it. He paused, then said, give me 3 hours and a sketch pad. By evening, Jake was sprawled at my kitchen table with drawings, pencils, and a laptop. We dove in like madmen. I flagged the rows with old tape while Jake mapped the maze like we were plotting a heist. We crafted loops, fake walls from bent stalks, and a path that spelled NOHOA from above. Old hoses guided water, solar lights lit the trails, and Bluetooth speakers hid in the corn for eerie effects. Jake rigged a pressure pad that triggered a witch's cackle when stepped Oni didn't ask where he learned that. For a week, we worked under moonlight, dodging the HOA's rare after 8 p.m. patrols. Evelyn thought she'd won. She had no idea. By the 4th night, it felt magical. What started as spite was becoming art. Word spread fast, I told one kid. And within 48 hours, 30 people lined up at my gate, asking if the haunted corn maze was open. Jake whipped up a QR code for tickets, $5, 10 with a flashlight. I roped in the girl down the street to sell snacks and lemonade. Suddenly, my little revolt was outpacing my pension. Opening day, while a Saturday with no permits was glorious chaos. Kids shrieked through the corn, parents snapped selfies by the scarecrow arch, and a drone buzzed overhead, filming the golden spirals. A 7-year-old tugged my sleeve and whispered, "This beats Disneyland." I nearly teared up, not because I bought it, but because I'd outdone a corporate giant with grit and corn. Then the HOA struck. Evelyn appeared mid-rush in a beige suit, bylaws rolled up like a sacred scroll. She didn't buy a ticket, just stood there, arms crossed, radiating disdain. I waved, offered her a flashlight. She didn't budge. "This violat's zoning laws," she barked, loud enough for the crowd. "Private land," I said coolly. "You're trespassing without a ticket." Laughter erupted. Her face turned beet red. 2 hours later, she returned with a clipboard and a guy who looked like he flunked gym class, claiming to be a safety inspector. "No handrails," he said. "It's a cornfield," I replied. "No escalators either." The crowd jeered. He stammered and bolted, Evelyn trailing, muttering about lawsuits. That night, Jake brought pizza. We sat on the porch, watching folks stumble out of the maze, laughing and dazed. Jake hid a coupon for free kettle corn in the center. People loved it. Strangers bonded over dead ends. Parents ditched screens for their kids. I hadn't seen this much life here in years, all because someone told me to yank my corn. A local reporter showed up next. A TikTok of the maze hit 100,000 views. I told her I'd talk if she navigated it without her phone. 20 minutes later, we were live on Channel 8, me in overalls, explaining how an overzealous HOA sparked this. I didn't name Evelyn. Didn't need to. By sunset, we'd had over 100 sighters, made nearly $500, and booked 2 birthday parties. Jake pitched t-shirts. I said slow down, we hadn't even started Halloween yet. But inside, I felt a glow tied to family picnics, my dad teaching me to plow, a time when people gathered for joy, not HOA checklists. By the 3rd weekend, the maze was a phenomenon. Folks drove from 3 counties over. Cars clogged the roads. The lemonade girl hired her cousin. Jake ran night tours for the bold and directionless. A food truck rolled up, offering free fried Oreos and a giant corn dog to stay. I took the deal. But all that buzz drew more HOA scrutiny, especially Evelyn, who was unraveling. She didn't just loathe the maze, she feared it. Every laugh, every ticket sold, proved her rules weren't in VY Cybele. Her retaliation was prim and VY Sias. She called an emergency HOA meeting, agenda, Grayson's corn violation, and community impact. I went not for fairness, but to watch the show. The room was packed, mostly with maze fans, teachers, parents, a firefighter, even Mrs. Carter, who hadn't attended in years. Evelyn sat rigid, flanked by her clipboard cronies, and launched a PowerPoint. The corn crisis. Blurry maze photos, a list of violations, noise, gatherings, even cult-like active VY tie. The room roared with laughter. My turn came. I spoke plain, my dad's corn, his lessons, how the maze breathed life back into this land for me, for everyone. Then I dropped a bombshell. I dug into town records and found a 1946 deed. Me granddad registered this plot as a community celebration ground for post-war gatherings. It was never rezoned. I handed the faded paper to the board chair, Paul, a quiet guy who seemed to hate his job. Evelyn snatched it, hunting for flaws, but it held. The room erupted, cheers, claps, disbelief. One crony stormed out. Evelyn yelled it was fake, outdated. Paul said they'd re-VYEW it. That was enough. Next day the maze swarmed. People brought chairs, a banjo, a popcorn machine. Kids drew chalk mazes. It wasn't just a protest, it was a party. That night, Jake showed me a trending video, a proposal in the maze's heart. "You're a legend, Uncle Henry," he said. Then his phone pinged an HOA email. Evelyn filed to void the land clause, claiming 50 years of inactive use killed its status. She wasn't done. My heart thudded. I needed more than charm now, I needed a crew. I called Ruth Simmons, retired principal, town icon, and Evelyn's kryptonite. Ruth knew everyone, commanded respect, and could rally a crowd. She didn't flinch. "Marge," she snapped over the phone, then showed up next day, sipping tea like it was war juice. We laid out the Saga Corn Maze Festival, Evelyn's legal jab. Ruth's eyes gleamed. "We're making this a festival," she said. "Loud, proud, undeniable. 1 weekend to prove this land's alive. Bold, risky, perfect." Prep was a whirlwind. Ruth called ex-students, no business owners, and bands. Jake built a stage from pallets. A church lady offered face painting. A guy brought a smoker for barbecue. Word flew, flyers, posts, texts. The Grayson Gala was on. Evelyn countered with fake county inspectors snooping at night, no badges, just clipboards and a blonde shadow in an SUV. I filmed them, they fled. Jake added a scream speaker for Karen defense. It worked. Saturday dawned bright, smelling of funnel cakes. Music blared, kids raced in capes, folks danced by the stage. Corn contest, try VYA. Jake swore kernel counts mattered. It was joy with a purpose. Evelyn arrived at noon, folding chair and codes in tow, glaring silently. An hour later, she handed me hearing papers for zoning violations. I offered her a corn dog. She stomped off, heels sinking. That evening, the mayor strolled a noon official with grandkids. He loved it, hinted at next year. As dusk fell, lanterns glowed, kids clutched cotton candy, and I stood by the sunflower patch I'd planted for my late wife. Jake grinned. "Made our point." "Yeah," I said, eyeing Evelyn's abandoned chair. But the hearing loomed. I had people now, stories, the town awake. Let her come. I was ready. The hearing day crept in, heavy and still. I brewed coffee, watched the corn brace itself. Inside, Evelyn and her dour lawyer faced me, Todd, Ruth, and a crowd of supporters outside with signs. She spun her tale: rules, aesthetics, expired clauses. I told my family, land, community, backed by photos, letters, the mayor's praise. Ruth read a widow's note tying the field to joy since 46. Silence fell, warm and tense. Evelyn faltered. The board ruled, the land stayed a celebration ground. The maze lived. Cheers erupted. That night, the maze blazed with lights, kids ran, folks danced barefoot. The sign now read, Dula 5 entry, Dula 28 HOA, kids free, with Jake's addition. For everyone who stood tall, even when it got ugly. They tried to uproot me. Instead, I grew something unbreakable. It started with one stalk and a simple no.